Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyaus Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragnish Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Begin today on verse number 10, that's on page 98. Yadeveha tadamutra yadamutra tadanviha mrityo samrityumapnoti ya iha naneva pashyati. Whatever is here, that is there. What is there, the same is here. He who sees here as different meets with death again and again. So the earlier two verses we saw emphasize this point, that the absolute and the immanent, while different on the surface, are not really different. The best way to remember this is to just keep in mind the example of the wave and the ocean. We know that a wave is a wave, the ocean is an ocean. The two are not same. So we can recognize the difference between the ocean and a wave. And even as we recognize the difference, if we look deeply enough, we see that that difference is only on the surface, because the ocean is really, the substance of the ocean is the water, and the substance of the wave is also the water. It's only the same water, when it takes a certain form and a certain movement, we call it a wave, but the substance itself is the same. So to not deny the difference, to see the difference, but also see that that difference is superficial, in the sense that if you look deeply, that difference doesn't exist. A rather crude example would be X-ray, for instance. So apparently, of course, we look different because our appearance is very different. No two people look exactly same. Even identical twins don't look same. But if you just stand before an X-ray, I know that if you look at it, even the bone structure might be different in different people. But in a rather superficial way, just as an X-ray will overlook all the superficial physical differences in appearance and just show essentially just a skeleton inside. So that's the crude similarity, the example I wanted to give. And this is very important because our present experience is an experience of diversity. And while diversity can be celebrated, we also know that the diversity in one form or another often becomes the cause of pain. Just the fact that things in this world are different, not just between one species and another species, but even within the same species, there are differences. So there are innumerable differences. And once there are differences, just the way the human mind is structured, we cannot, although people speak about celebrating diversity, we don't simply celebrate it. Along with the celebration, we also categorize things. And once we start categorizing things, then we say something is higher, something is lower, something is better, something is worse, something is superior, something is inferior. Once we start making these kind of value judgments, then it sets up all kinds of reactions. And we know the world in which we live is filled with these negativities, which has led to not only disagreements, but sometimes just fights, quarrels, death, destruction. It can go to any extreme. And so we need, as spiritual seekers, although the Upanishad is specifically speaking about not seeing the difference between the absolute and the manifested, the unmanifested and the manifested, we can extend that analogy to all the differences that we see. So, one of the things that we see in Ramakrishna's teachings, of course, that yes, there are different religions. So, not all religions are same. That's very clear. At the same time, we can look at these different religious traditions and look deeply enough and see what are they exactly trying to do. The problems of mortal beings like human beings, the problems the human beings have, the kind of questions human beings ask, are the kind of questions and the kind of problems they have had all throughout history. And when they have tried to find answers to these questions, these answers have been formulated in different ways, in different centuries, in different parts of the world. And these different answers have constituted or developed into these different religious traditions. But even as the answers look different, if we look deeply enough into all those answers, we will discover more similarity than difference. We will discover that the soul of all religious quest, no matter in which way it is manifested outwardly, is that quest of the finite creature trying to seek, trying to communicate, trying to get in touch with the infinite. And so even when we see the difference, we are still able to see the sameness, the unity. So unity in diversity. Same thing with regard to Gender differences. Clearly, gender differences, that's a big issue in the world in which we live. Even as we acknowledge the problems that gender differences have, as spiritual seekers, we can still look deeply and find that yes, these differences, while real, are not intrinsic to my existence. In Vedantic formulation, the gender differences extend only up to the body, not to the mind. Although we say men are from Mars and women are from Venus, which might make us think that the male mind and the female mind is different. That way of thinking would make sense if we believe in just one life. Then, of course, you can say, well, a male is a male body and a male mind, and a female body and a female mind, and one can develop a theology accordingly. But if we believe in rebirth, then it's very difficult to think of a male mind or a female mind. Because at death, the body falls down. But the mind is the one which carries the spirit to different existences. And the same mind then acquires a different body. And because the mind is capable of acquiring a body of any gender, there is no such thing as a male mind or a female mind. The same mind that we have now, irrespective of whatever body it is occupying at present, in its long history, it has occupied different bodies of different genders. And therefore, even gender differences are not deep enough. Swami Tyagananda, a great disciple of Ramakrishna, who spent a few years in this country, once remarked that throughout his stay in the West, he said he could not distinguish between men and women. Now, what does that statement really mean? He had eyes, he could see. It's not as if he couldn't. So it's not that he didn't know who was a male person or who was a female. But when he said I could not distinguish between them, means that when he's interacted with people, the dominant perception he had was not of the body standing in front of him, but of the mind, of the spirit. And the spirit and the mind, they don't have any gender. The gender is only at the external level. Same thing with regard to caste in India, or class in UK, for instance, and race. So all the problems connected with racism or casteism or class, I don't know whether there is a word called classism. Whenever these factors influence the way we treat other people or consider other people, that shows that we are seeing a difference. So all of these kind of differences are implied into this verse when it says, whatever is here, that is there. What is there, the same is here. He who sees here as different meets with death again and again. So whenever we see this different and fail to acknowledge the unity that is at the root of all these differences, meet with death again and again means death is something that we are afraid of, whether we acknowledge it openly or not. Death is often seen as something painful, something mysterious, something that we don't want to think about. So every time we dwell in differences, without acknowledging the underlying unity, we are setting ourselves up for the pain and suffering that is associated with death. Many of the immigrants have to deal with this as well. We know this is a big issue in the country right now, that immigrants are seen as aliens, that they are different from us. And that is setting up a lot of problems. But even from the point of view of immigrants themselves, whenever somebody gets transplanted from one place into a different culture or a different place, far away from what is seen as the homeland, how long does an immigrant have to stay not only with the immigrant label legally or externally, but an immigrant mentality inwardly? In other words, which is our home? And this is a big question, but at some point we all have to ask that ourselves. Which is my home? One way of understanding home for many of us would be the home where we have spent, say, a large part of our childhood. We know that very few people today grow up in the same home and that stay there all through their lives. There are places in this world where that does happen. But by and large, especially in the developed parts of the world, seldom do we just stay in the same home. So that's one home. The memories, the sweet memories of our childhood, being grown up in a certain country or a certain city, in a certain home. And then for one reason or other, for education, for job, for whatever other reasons, we move. We sometimes move from one country to another, one place, one city to another place, and so on. Or even within the city, from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. And so at some point we have to ask ourselves, which is my home? Do I have any, what is my idea of a home? And if we can, one way we can see is that, well, I've had many homes. I've been in many different places, I've had many homes. So there is this difference, seeing difference in the different homes that I've had. But then if we look deeply enough and say, what makes a place a home? When we are traveling somewhere, even if you go on a vacation and stay for a week or 10 days and book a room in some hotel, it never feels like home. Although it may have all the comforts that one seeks, that doesn't feel like home. So a home is a place where you have a sense of belonging. You just feel, just like a baby would feel completely at home when the baby is with its mother. So a home is a little bit like that. That a place where I feel I belong, a place I feel secure, a place I feel happy and comfortable. And if we can manage to feel that kind of inner calmness, security, a sense of belonging wherever we are, then any place we are in becomes our home. So that's what I meant by this immigrant mentality, that no matter where we are, if we can see that that is my home. And for spiritual seekers, my true home is not an external place of walls and a roof. A true home for a spiritual seeker is the heart. And we have spoken a lot about the heart in the Upanishad. Because that's where ultimately the greatest amount of security, warmth, love we feel when we are in the presence of God in our heart. So a true home for a spiritual seeker is our own heart. And wherever we go, we carry that heart with us. And only when we are able to feel, I'm in the right place, I'm at home all the time, then the mrityosam mrityum apnoti, all the differences will disappear. All the uncertainties, fear, all the constant change and the insecurity that change can generate within us, all that will disappear. And so that's the message of this verse, that recognizing the differences in our present life, but looking deeply in those differences and seeing that at the root of all those differences is a unity. And that unity is deeply in our own heart. If we can do that, we are safe. If we fail to do that, the Upanishad says, such a person meets with death again and again. In other words, such a person has to keep on transmigrating. Just as when we fail in our exams, we have to repeat the class. If we fail in this examination of life, we have to repeat the class. We have to be born again. Someone said, I was not so much attracted by the goal of moksha, but when I heard that I would have to go to school once again to be reborn, then I said, no, I must really get moksha as quickly as possible. And so, again, we have to go through the whole thing. So if we don't want to repeat that entire cycle, then we say, let me try to find a way that I don't have to go from death to death again and again. And the way to do it is to see the differences and look at the differences deeply and recognize that there is unity underlying those differences. Verse 12. Manasaivedamaptavyam neha nanasti kinchana mrityo mrityum gacchati ya iha naneva pashyati. By mind alone is this to be realized, and then there is no difference here. From death to death he goes, who sees as if there is difference here. So I said we should look deeply and recognize that unity. But what is it? What is our instrument that will help us look deeply? And that the Upanishad says, by mind alone is this to be realized. Come to think of it, we really don't have much of a choice. The only instruments we have are the body and the mind. The body is useful, but the body also is severely handicapped because the body is perishable. The mind also is ultimately perishable, but mind lasts longer. The mind, being subtle, is more powerful than the body. The mind can do the things that the body cannot. My body, if it's not trained, may not be able to climb Mount Everest. My mind can do it right now, in a minute. If you have ever wanted to go to Mars or the moon and felt like, well, it's not going to happen in this life, well, your body can't go there. Your mind can go right now to Mars, moon, any galaxy you want. So the mind is much, much more powerful. And we saw earlier in the verse when Yama pointed out that the Atman is present in the hearts of all of us, but it remains hidden. But it can be seen, drishyate. And Yama pointed out in an earlier verse that it can be seen by sukshmaya sukshmadarshibhihi, people who have acquired the ability to see subtle things. And that is what this mind does. In other places in the Upanishads, it is said that that truth, that unity, is avang manasa gocharam. That unity cannot be reached by the senses or the mind. So it seems a contradiction here, because in a different Upanishad it is said the mind cannot reach there. Na tatra chakshur gacchati, na vak gacchati, no manaha. Again, the Upanishad keep on saying that.
The eyes cannot reach there. The senses that cannot reach there. The speech cannot reach there. The mind cannot reach there. And now we are being told the mind alone can do it. In the commentary to this, Shankaracharya therefore says, Su samskritena manasa, a mind which is purified can see it. So the difference is a mind which is impure cannot see that unity. A mind which is pure can see it. Now what is this? What is it that makes mind impure or pure? From a Vedantic perspective, it's pretty simple. As long as my mind is preoccupied with limited, perishable, material things, it hasn't become pure enough. As long as my mind, all that my mind can see or can understand, only coarse, tangible things, it hasn't become pure enough. But when my mind acquires the sensitivity to look deeper and see subtle things which are hidden behind the tangible, visible things, then the mind is becoming purer. So the ability to see subtle things, and the ability to see subtle things comes through sensitivity. So we need to develop a sensitive mind. We know that there are things that we may not be able to see with the naked eye. We can see through a microscope, because the microscope has the ability to make our vision a little bit more powerful. So there, of course, a microscope is an external instrument which will help me see things that I cannot see with my eyes. But now we have the mind itself has the ability to see subtle things, provided I'm able to remove that dross before my mind's filled. So the mind is kind of acquired these layers through a certain way of thinking. Not that has been acquired only in this life. A certain way of thinking that we have acquired through God knows how many lives we have had in the past. So when we struggle in spiritual life, the struggle itself is not surprising, because it's a struggle against a kind of thinking that has been solidified through millions and millions of births. So it's a Herculean task. But it has got to be done, because the mind won't just change its way of doing things by default. If we don't do something, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So we have to be proactive about it. And spiritual life is nothing but being proactive about being vigilant about which direction my mind is going. And once that mind becomes pure, that's, again, I often mention this, that the Gayatri prayer, Dhiyo Yonav Prachodayat, that Dhi is really what that purified mind is. So only when the mind is pure, it will guide me, it will direct me in the right direction. And the basis of purifying the mind, the first step is leading an ethical, moral life. A life which recognizes the value of truthfulness, honesty, kindness, unselfishness, everything that gets encompassed in the word dharma. A life that lives according to dharma, that is the basis for purification. And once we are able to live according to these values and principles in our life, the mind not only becomes clear and pure, but becomes even more powerful. And that power is what gives us the strength to resist the force of habit. Habit is a very powerful force. Acquiring new habits is not very difficult. resisting the force of old habits, that is difficult. Learning something new is not difficult. Unlearning old things, that is difficult. And so what gives the mind the power to resist these old harmful ways of thinking and doing is this honest, truthful life. So dharma is the very basis. Morality, ethics is the very basis of purifying the mind. It is with that mind is this to be realized. And once it is realized, we see that there is no difference here. From death to death he goes, who sees as if there is difference here. So that's the idea that's repeated here. That if I continue to see the differences, as long as I see the differences, I am bound by those differences. As long as I see that I am here, I will have the desire to go there. Because as long as there is there, I will have to do something about that there. Either go there or go towards it or run away from it. But when there is no there, then there is nowhere to go. Nowhere to come, nowhere to go. So as long as there is one other thing in this universe, one other place, one other time, something else it is there, I am going to respond to it in one form or the other. And every time I respond to it, I am bound by it. The only way to overcome bondage is to not have anything else to respond to. And that is why the Upanishad says, in that highest state of unity, tatra kenakam pashet, kenakam vijaniyat. Once that unity is reached, then who will see there to whom? Who is there to know whom? So there is no seeing, there is no knowing, there is no nothing. There is just being. And the closest we come to that experience in our present unawakened state is in a state of deep sleep. When we are fast asleep, when we are not even dreaming, there is nothing to see, nobody to talk to, nothing to be afraid of, nothing to achieve, nothing to run away from, no frustration, nothing. We're just there, that's all. We're just existing. And we might say, oh, that might be pretty boring. Actually, no. When we wake up next morning and you have really had a good sleep, you feel happy. You just feel, I had good sleep. I just felt so happy. So, if I can be in that state of unity, we know presently, even in our state of ignorance, even in our present unawakened state, that sort of unity we experience in deep sleep is extremely blissful. Think about getting that same experience in a fully awakened state. When we are filled with no ignorance at all, that joy will be multiplied 1,000,000 times more. And that is the joy that will never end. All other joys in this world will end. No matter how delicious your tiramisu might be, that joy, as long as it is on your tongue, you are enjoying it. And maybe a little while afterwards, just the memory of it. But that's it. All the joys in this world are really short-lived. They seem to last longer, not because the experience itself, but because the memory of it. Sometimes when you had some really good time, the actual good time, the actual good experience was pretty limited. But then later on we say, I had such a good time. I felt so happy. So just the memory of it gives the idea of a continuation of that happiness. But even that doesn't remain all the time. It gets punctuated by other painful experience. And that is the story of our life. That there is sukha, there is dukkha. There is joy, there is sorrow, there is pain. And so nature really plays with us. It's a little bit like, it's like some bully. Just say, think about it this way, that let's say someone has left their little child with a babysitter and have gone somewhere and said, we'll be away for a whole day. And the babysitter is maybe not such a good person, who is a, well, you decide what the babysitter is. I'll tell you what the babysitter does. I'm not saying about all babysitters. This one particular case. Suppose this babysitter says, oh, let me just have fun. And so the babysitter goes, and the little child is playing, and they just kind of, maybe just kind of beat. Okay. Maybe the babysitter does something to the, beats the baby or does something to annoy the baby, and the baby starts crying, or frightens the baby in some way, and the baby starts crying. And it allows the baby to cry for a while. And then it gives that baby a candy that that baby loves very much. And baby is like, oh, it's candy. And the baby then enjoys the candy. And the baby is so happy. And after some time, the babysitter will again do something and make the baby cry. And then again give some candy. And then maybe a whole day passes that way. In the end, the parents come, and then the baby is happy again. Now, it's just a simple example. But in a way, if we look back at our life, that's pretty much how it is happening. We see that there are things in our life which make us happy, and that happiness lasts for a while, and then something else happens, and we are not so happy. And then we say, oh, then it could be extreme, or it could be just mild pain, and then again something happy comes. So we're just going back and forth. Like a game of tennis, the ball will go from this court to that court. So sukha, dukkha, sukha, dukkha, sukha, dukkha. It just goes on and on. It's unending. And that's been happening in every life. At some point, a spiritual seeker is one says, and then the tennis ball is just whacked from two sides. They're just beating them. So at some point, you're going to say, no, I just don't want to go back and forth between joy and sorrow. I just want to be just myself. I just want to be still. As long as you are going back and forth, that is what going or meeting death again and again means. That is what the Upanishad says. Such a person is a victim, a plaything in the hand of some material forces which are just playing with us, giving us things we clap and we say we are happy about. Then it gives us some pain, and then we sit and cry. And so we have to say now, as spiritual seekers, no, I will not allow the material forces to play with me like this. Because that is, the real bondage is that my happiness and my sorrow is not, I'm not really choosing it. I'm just being played by somebody else. Somebody else is playing games with me. And I have to say no. If I want to be happy, I will do it of my own volition, not because somebody is manipulating me. And if I want to be miserable, even that I will choose to be miserable, but not allow external forces to decide whether I should be miserable or not. That requires courage. And that is the kind of courage that the Upanishad speaks about. So this is very important for so mrityosa mrityum gacchati. The earlier words also said mrityosa mrityum apnoti. So a lot of talk about death here. But death here means really the surrendering of our freedom. And the first thing important here is to first recognize the bondage we are in. I can guarantee you that most people in the world don't think of this bondage. Yes, they recognize bondage in many other forms. But most people in the world also feel, oh, we are free. We are free beings. It's only a spiritual seeker who looks and says, no, we are not as free as we think. I'll become truly free if within all these differences, I'm able to see that unity. And once I'm able to see that unity, these forces of nature, these material forces, cannot play games with me then. Because that unity gives me a firm hold. I can hold on to it and nothing will affect me. And that's what happens when a person becomes enlightened. One becomes rooted in that unity. That is why the word for health in Sanskrit and many Indian languages is swastha. So sometimes people will say, are you swastha? Or if they are not well, they'll say, oh, I am aswastha. Now generally people use it to just refer to illness as aswastha. But really the literal meaning is swa. Swa means the Atman. Stha means established. So swastha, health really means I am established in my true self. So that is real health. Aswastha means I am not established in my true health, in my true spirit. That's basically it. And that's why in many Vedanta books, they speak about a present existence, present experience as a kind of a disease of worldliness. They call it bhava roga. Bhava is this all samsara. And roga is a disease of worldliness, a disease that has taken away my freedom. And therefore sometimes God is referred to as bhava roga vaidya, the physician who will remove this illness. And that physician, seen in the language of devotion, is the divine being. Seen in a philosophical way is my own true spirit, the Atman or Brahman. That's the idea. Any thoughts, ideas?
When I say that I don't want to be going with happiness and sorrow, again back in happiness, is that I is the shadow Atma with mind and the senses?
Yes, so the Atman is under the snare of the body and mind, material thing, but not fully. So a part of the Atman is aware of its innate freedom. A part of the Atman knows that it's not free. Most of it is kind of caught in it. So there is a little part of us that has become awakened. Most of it is still asleep. Okay, think about it this way. Sometimes we decide, say, I'm going to wake up early in the morning. And then maybe we put an alarm or something, and then we wake up. And a part of me at that time is saying, you heard the alarm, now get up. But the most of me is like, no, let me sleep a little longer, a few more minutes. So I'm one person, but there is this thing happening. Something within me is telling me, no, you have to get up now, get up and meditate. And the other portion is saying, no. It's a little bit like that. So it's the Atman, a little bit of the Atman which has become awakened, is saying, oh, I must get out of this. And the most of the other thing is, no, what's the hurry? It's the same way. So there is a sort of internal division. And that's why we have all the inner dilemmas, and the struggle is between these two apparent segments of our own personality. Yeah. Thank you.
Swamiji, when we think of physical strength...
Is that phone working?
It's... maybe Maybe I should turn it on.
Yeah.
Swamiji, when we think of physical strength, there are various tests we can do we can run a race and see how fit we were, and based on that feedback, we can then exercise. Are there mental tests that we can take to see how mentally strong we are?
Well, one of the things in those of us who do japa or meditation regularly can see how long am I able to, when I do japa, how long am I able to do it without getting distracted? And in the beginning, it might be just 108 times. The moment I start a second round, my mind starts getting restless. And then maybe over time I find I'm able to do 2 rounds of malas instead of 1, or 5, or 10. So it's not just about number, that how much I'm able to do without getting distracted. And that would be one measurement of how my mind, because the ability to meditate without distraction is a good measure, because meditation really means the mind being, we are in meditation, what we are trying to do is make the mind hold on to an ideal which is quite abstract. Even if we are trying to think of the form of our chosen deity, it's a very active, creative thing. In your mind, you're trying to visualize God in your heart. You're trying to hold on to the sound of your mantra. And it's so much more easy for me to kind of look at this and play with this. But it's not so easy for me to play or look and think of the thing. So it's actually increasing the power of the mind, that instead of dwelling on only gross material things, it's able to live longer with ideas and forms and sounds. And that's the way the mind becomes capable of dealing with subtler realities.
Swamiji, you talked about the diversity. We have so much different in the world. I think when we see so much diversity and everybody has like unique thing, we always say it is such a miracle that God has created. And at the same time, we say that it is all not true. So is it a miracle, or is it nothing is there? What is true?
No. You're seeing it, so you can't say it is not there. But just because you're seeing it doesn't mean it is true. But just because it is not true doesn't mean you can't learn anything from it. Think about it this way. When you go to see a movie, it's some fictitious story, but a fictitious story can have a message. People have been inspired by reading novels, even fiction, or watching movies, and done wonderful things. So the change that occurs in a person's mind is very real, even if the cause of that is imaginary. So this miracle doesn't have to be real. But as we saw in this Upanishad, what it's really saying is, to even say it's not real is not accurate. Okay, let me put it this way. The substance of the diversity is real, because the substance of the diversity and the substance of unity are not different. Just like the substance of waves and the substance of the ocean are not different. The wave is different from the ocean, but the substance which makes a wave and an ocean, that's just that water. That's not different. So similarly, all the diversity that we see, you look deeply inside, if you see the unity in diversity, then you will see that the two are not different. Does that make sense? It's a little bit like, again, I mean, at the very physical level, if you see, At the physical level, every material object is just atoms and molecules. As atoms and molecules, there's no difference. If we just chop off every little particle of our body and just heap of yourself and a heap of myself, the two heaps are just atoms and molecules. There is no difference. Only when they are put together in a certain configuration, it looks different, right? So a diversity is there and yet not there.
Okay, the follow-up question, when you say the substance is real, and I think when we talk about the creation, we say that even that substance is not real. It's like God is sleeping, whatever is creation, that itself is not real. So what is real then? Even that is not real. The substance with which the world is made, that is also not real. It's apparently real.
Well, the substance from which the world is made is as real as the one who is seeing that world. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the challenge is, we want to hold on to our reality while questioning the reality of everything outside. That is the problem. That my reality as this person, I hold that and I say, oh, this is all unreal. No, that's not true. All of this that I see is as real as the one who is seeing it. Because the Atman doesn't need to see anything. And so long if I want to deny the reality of that diversity, then my diversity here also has to be denied. I cannot keep this diversity and only deny that diversity. That's what is meant. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Swamiji. So, this is a follow-up question on your first answer. You said that there's a division between our Atman, that most of the part is not aware, but certain part of it is aware. So, do we have any word to refer those parts, that division?
Do we have any
word, any linguistic word to refer those parts?
Well, one of the things you could say, it's the higher self and lower self, if you want. The Gita says, lift yourself with yourself. Uddharet atmana atmanam. Or it says how can you lift yourself with yourself? And so what the two selves that are meant here is that awakened part of the mind should try to lift the unawakened part of the mind up. So those are the ways we can describe it. Yeah. Okay, so we will stop here tonight, and next week we will begin with verse number 12. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhuhu. On Sunday, we have a guest speaker, Khalil Abdul Rashid, who is a Muslim chaplain at Harvard. He will speak on spiritual cultivation through fasting in Islam. So this is the Ramadan season. So this will be a very appropriate topic for discussion and reflection. So I encourage all of you to come on Sunday for this talk. Next Wednesday, we will continue with this study of the Upanishad. This Saturday we will not have meditation, but we'll have meditation as usual next Tuesday. Let's conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.